The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial advisor or tax advisor prior to investing. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through VestGen Advisors, LLC. People of Chicago, welcome to In the Know Radio with Craig Bolanos, co-founder and wealth advisor at VestGen Wealth Partners. You want help from someone you can trust, someone who knows what it takes to get retired and stay retired. Today, Craig's going to teach you what you need to know. So get ready to learn something that could change your life. Get connected to the show by calling 833-964-PLAN or go to getretiredstayretired.com. And now, here's Craig Bolanos.
Hey, good morning. Happy Sunday to you. We exist to provide you sincere and actionable ideas that you can use to improve the lives of yourself and your loved ones financially. Because again, just as we said in that promo, you can't just get retired. You need to make sure you have a disciplined plan to stay retired. And that's going to take strategies that are TNT, tested in the trenches. We've seen the Argentinian bond debacle, the Russian ruble collapse. We've been through the dot-com disaster that was 2000 to 2002. Who doesn't remember the GFC, the great financial crisis? And of course, oh my heavens, everything that included COVID, which was a big part of not even tapping the brakes on the economic engine. We just drove the economic engine, the car of the U.S. economy, straight into a tree. But the bottom line is we're here. Clients are staying retired, and that's because, again, it's a team-based environment. We believe in a family office for everyone because it's not just about investing. It's not just about retiree healthcare. It's about a strong commitment to the financial planning process, which is disciplined cash flow modeling, goals-based strategies, all backed by a world-class, leading, robust investment platform to help align your wealth and your life. All right, 833-964-PLAN, 833-964-PLAN. Go to our website, getretiredstayretired.com. So, hey, so much for some of those doldrums that came in the early part of January. I think everyone's getting reminded here as I saw the Dow and the S&P in particular, closed at a record high earlier this week. And why the optimism? Well, I think the optimism is, in case you missed it, the earnings have been good. Look at what the banks told us right out of the gate. And in fact, don't just look at the banks, look at the optimism that came in the comment from some of the CEOs based on the regulatory environment and the pro-growth politics that they see coming out of this administration. Part number two, AI, the enthusiasm, it's still here. And you know what? It should be, because in your lifetime, like me, you've seen transformations. You know what the semiconductor did for Silicon Valley and ultimately the launch and explosion of the internet. Then who can forget the energy renaissance that came in America, that energy renaissance that came from fracking, from offshore drilling, from unleashing opportunity in liquefied natural gas in this tremendous way. And now we stand on this third revolution, which is generative AI. What used to be a sci-fi concept, what used to be a movie like The Terminator, oh my heavens, it's real. But the opportunity isn't just with the companies that are providing the processing. It's all of the companies who are going to benefit from the widespread adoption, the productivity per unit labor hour. It's about the non-tech companies that are going to be embracing AI for their earnings per share. And my heavens, that's such an exciting place to be. So I think that becomes our first topic, which is it's important that people invest in what we refer to as megatrends, okay? And part of this concept of megatrends is having portions of your portfolio aligned with long-term secular trends, the type of trends that you just need to be aligned with and you can't afford to get shaken out of. And let's discuss what some of those are. The first is what we just got done talking about, the artificial intelligence. You need to make sure you are playing the AI game by owning direct companies or through proxies, indices, and ETFs, enough artificial intelligence exposure, because it is that third transformation inside the modern economy. And we are very, very much in the early innings. But supporting all of that AI, then comes these other subsets that are here. Think about power. Think about infrastructure. Think of all those things that are needed to support the verticals and the ecosystem that is artificial intelligence. And away from that, the next thing I think about, and we talk about it all the time, is going to be energy. Yes, it is a mega trend. Remember, I mentioned that energy renaissance we talked about? Well, the world has not gotten off of fossil fuels. The world has not gotten off of West Texas Intermediate crude or Brent crude in Europe. These things are going to continue to exist. And with a new administration, you have to be bullish on not just U.S. energy policy, not just U.S. dominance in this area, but you have to be optimistic and bullish that all forms of energy are a very investable thematic in your portfolio to power this global engine that is the world's economy. And away from that, have you noticed what I've noticed? How many people are paying with cash anymore? Not many. Are people still swiping credit cards or tapping credit cards? Of course they are. But I see a world of digital payments consistently and constantly when I'm at the store. And whether that's Apple Pay, whether it's Venmo, whether it's Zelle, you can name all of these, but we have to say that digital payments and digital payment apps to transact and process business is definitively a mega trend that people should be a part of. And then away from digital payments, something that is different is the world of virtual currency. Some people refer to it as cryptocurrency. A proxy for both of those would be the largest asset class, or the largest asset, that being Bitcoin. And I'm not saying people need to be invested there, but I'm saying it likely is here to stay. This concept of blockchain, a open peer-to-peer network to validate transactions without a middleman and a third party, is incredibly transformative away from the concept, dominance, prowess, and reach, and sometimes overreach of banks, central banks, and other financial underwriters. And I think if you're not spending enough time talking about the concept of virtual currency, if you're not learning about different ways to participate, then you probably can and you probably should, because I think there's been enough investment and enough co-investment that this is here to stay, put on top the fact that it's supported by the current administration, and that provides some additional fuel to keep that party potentially moving. Now, away from those items, you also have to acknowledge something. We have to acknowledge the age wave demographics, the population density study, the fact that everybody around the world, not just in America, is getting older. And I think about the study of genomics. I mean, not just biotechnology, but genomics. Look at all of the injectable therapeutics that are happening in today's world. Even something you see commercials for all day long, like GLP-1s. These aren't going away. They're here to stay. And investing in healthcare, investing through the science of healthcare, makes a tremendous amount of sense. That's an additional mega trend. And of course, away from that, you have to think about cybersecurity, protecting that PII, that personally identifiable information. This is not just an individual thing. It is not just a business thing. Cybersecurity is an everything thing. And investing in companies that can defend that turf, put up that moat, create that wall to prevent attacks, boy, That is such an investable theme, especially as we transition to this world of digital payments, virtual currency, you name it. So there's one other piece. As I'm identifying some of these mega trends that are investment themes, I just think about IoT, the Internet of Things. It's all of these devices that are connected together, but it's all these devices that are connected together, creating a discernible automated action. It's harnessing all of these things together. And if you want to learn about how we're adopting mega trends in client portfolios, how we use that as growth capital to help people get retired and stay retired, well, then I encourage you to learn more. And the way you can do that is just we're a phone call away. That's 833-964-PLAN, 833-964-PLAN, or connect with us on our website, getretiredstayretired.com. That's getretiredstayretired.com. Now, coming up next, I want to spend some time talking more about investing not just in public markets, but investing in private markets, diversifying further than just the traditional 60-40 portfolio, but moving into that world of alternative investments. It might not be for everybody, but it is for many. And there's strategies and tools and tips that I think you deserve to learn about and things you want to know. So stay tuned. There's going to be more to come, but we got to pay the bills. That means run a couple of commercials. So in the meantime, 833-964-PLAN. Connect with us. GetRetiredStayRetired.com. You're listening to In the Know with Craig Bolanos, VestGen Wealth Partners, on your favorite station, AM 560, The Answer.
Radio with Craig Bolanos on AM 560 The Answer, where his goal is to pummel you with financial know-how until you say uncle.
All right, we got to talk a little bit about boomers, next geners, and private markets. And it's about expanding the investment toolkit, not just for today, but for tomorrow. I think everybody knows we're all shaped by our experiences and wealth accumulation. Yes, wealth accumulation of all the past generations has relied heavily, most heavily, on the returns of publicly traded stock, what we call public equity. However, we are seeing tectonic, major demographic shifts of wealth holders pushing changes in today's capital market. And I think due to that changing investment objective of an aging population, we sit today at this inflection point that many call the great wealth transfer. I mean, there is literally going to be, it's not coming to you, it's not coming to me, but there's going to be a collective $84 trillion, $84 trillion in wealth changing hands from one gen to the next. And my comment is where we are, I think it means in order to effectively build portfolios for the future state, building portfolios for the future state that deliver similar wealth accumulation potential to those of the past, we got to acknowledge that the nature, this fundamental nature of equity ownership has changed. Public stocks, once the only way to access broad ownership of the American economy, are a shrinking and more concentrated universe. Private companies more closely resemble what equity was in its early days. So what public equity did for prior generations is what private equity can potentially do for future generations who have the same quest for wealth accumulation over time. I think that's really critical to understand, really critical just to know. So ultimately, and then we're going to talk about how to do some of this, the investment objective of a lot of investors is to get retired, stay retired, and a part of that is the wealth accumulation. And that means a certain level of investment return must be reasonably expected. And for that return, people have to assume a certain level of risk. They go hand in hand. But I think we need to challenge the notion that it's just traditional stocks and bonds that are going to sufficiently achieve the wealth accumulation goal in the future state of where we're at. And that's why the introduction and the incorporation of alternatives, I think, is going to be critical to everybody. So I've been talking about alternative investments as a theme if you're just joining for 2025. And if you want to learn more, you can. If you want to learn more, you know what? You should. 833-964-PLAN. That's 833-964-PLAN. Check us out online. GetRetiredStayRetired.com. Now, the first type of alternative investment that we've discussed in the past that I come back to is the world of private credit. And again, private credit is not for everybody. But if someone says, why private credit? Understand what's happening. Over time, banks have retrenched from what I call middle market companies. That's because of regulatory risk that previous administrations had put out there. But the world of free markets, free men and free women, asset managers have filled that void to become the lender that banks once were. And when you have income-oriented, floating rate portfolios that embed value, they act as a hedge against inflation, a hedge against rising rates. And when you pair that with lower correlations, lower volatility, that's true diversification, lower volatility, lower correlations to traditional assets, you really get to a place of better diversification. And if you think about that evolution of the US banking system, right? I mean, you had the pre-crisis 89 to 07, you had the crisis credit, that's the fallout 2008 to 2012. You had all the bank regulation, private credit acceptance 2013 and beyond. And that's what set us up for this increased role of private credit in the current day. And the numbers speak for themselves, because when you can work through a diversified portfolio of lending as a complement to your traditional fixed income, and you have average correlations to bond indices of just 0.2, that's very low similarity, very low correlation, and you've got good, solid historical CAGRs, compound annual growth rates, you got to look at this stuff, especially when it's yielding 900 basis points, 9% or more over time. And history is not necessarily indicative of the future, but the stars align. And that's why part number one, I really want people to learn more about how we are deploying private credit for those clients who qualify and those clients who want to achieve an income component, which is consistent with what you need to stay retired. You got to make sure you're generating enough income. We'll talk more about that in a minute. All right, what's another form of alternative investment? Because we can't just be all in public markets. Some of our money should probably find its way into the world of private markets. And what stands out for me is real estate. And in fact, where some of that comes from is a simple belief. Some of what worked yesterday continues to work today as long as there's adaptation and innovation for tomorrow. And think about where this is going when I talk about real estate. Global trade, growth of imports, exports, fragmented markets, especially in this owner-operator platform. It's hard to disseminate every single tangible product we use that needs to be transported and stored. And when you think of the world of industrial real estate, I think it's at the forefront of technological advancement. We're talking data, technology, analytics, becoming an increasingly integral part of the investment, asset management, and due diligence activity. And think about how businesses in America today are utilizing warehouse space. It's evolving, allowing us to reimagine its future role, functionality, location, and then the resilience. I mean, think about the resilience of warehousing. I talk more about that through pandemic accelerated e-commerce activity. That's right. That's just there. So when you think about it, what drives the demand for, distribution warehouses. You see them all over the place, these big concrete bunkers, and they got 80 garages, and they're all off the highways because you got all the trucks coming in and out. Think of the companies that they support, from Amazon to Walmart, but it's everybody. Listen, guys, there's tremendous population growth. And when you have population growth, more people, they consume more products. There's growth in product selection. There's an increased consumer demand for consistently re-engineered products. The online experience gives people access to try new things. You've got global manufacturing, but a big part of that's going to be reshoring as more stuff gets made in the US, courtesy of President Trump. And it's the e-commerce revolution, the continued growth of online consumer purchases that are just going to drive this entire thing. So when I think about the journey of a pair of jeans, from raw material to manufacturing, multiple distribution warehouses to the point of sale, all in a retail location, that screams that if you want an additional diversifier away from publicly traded securities, then your first stop is to probably look and learn about generating income with private credit. Your second stop is probably to take a look at some secured asset investing in the form of real estate, but doing it privately, not publicly. And I think warehousing is a great way to look. And if you want to learn more, you can. 833-964 plan. 833-964 plan. Connect with me at getretiredstayretired.com. That's getretiredstayretired.com. The other thing that resonates is you look at where we're at in the world. We're going to talk about another form of real estate, which is infrastructure. Remember earlier today, we talked about those mega trends. We talked specifically about generative AI. We talked specifically about genomics. I mean, the data centers that need to power this stuff. We talked about the energy renaissance, both fossil fuel and what is clean. Listen, these are undeniable trends, and I'm trying to share with you some ways that we're helping clients in 2025 further diversify their securities, not just from public markets, but to include places of private markets, especially given the run-up we've had in equities over the last 2 years. We exist to help families just like you achieve their financial goals. It takes more than a solo advisor. It takes a team of advisors and a multidisciplinary approach of retirement planning, cash flow analytics, investing under a fiduciary standard, tax strategies. We are going to be talking more today about the 6 hurdles to the Trump tax bill and things you should be prepping for and thinking about so you can be 2 steps ahead. You have to be focused as well on retiree healthcare. And we bring all of those solutions under one roof at our company. We refer to it as a family office for everyone. And if you want to learn more, you can connect with me, Craig Bolanos, VestGen Wealth Partners. Our web address, getretiredstayretired.com. Okay, when we come back, I'm going to give you some information on a third alternative investment that you might want to consider putting in as a diversifier for part of your portfolio, and that's infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit about that right after the break. In the Know, Craig Bolanos.
In the Know Radio. You want more In the Know Radio? You can't handle more In the Know Radio. Okay, yeah, you can. And it's on AM 560. The Answer. Welcome back. Here's more with Craig.
So we were discussing this transition of what it's going to take to build portfolios in the future. Maybe even this is the inflection point where people go beyond the traditional 60-40 allocation to get retired and stay retired. And that means a world of alternatives for those who value lower volatility, better diversification through low correlation. We talked about the world of private credit. We just got done talking about the concept of what I call anchored real estate with warehousing, and I bring up a third. The third I bring up is infrastructure as an approach. And what I think is infrastructure, we all know what it is, but it's comprised of these essential, yes, essential systems and services that just facilitate all of our needs. And those needs are evolving over time. Think transportation, utilities, energy, digital, industrial, social. And the benefit of investing in infrastructure is, again, you've got these essential services that are contracted with regulated revenues. They're backed by hard assets. They're established market positions. That gives you the potential for capital preservation, the potential for inflation hedging, and it gives you some better visibility of long-term cash flows. In fact, any of the alternative investments today have really been about cash flows, building that passive income. So I do think that infrastructure, when it's invested well, has the potential to provide an attractive opportunity in the macro environment. Because again, there's a capital preservation component. That's the essential services. It's consistent cash distribution, because infrastructure assets can and may provide that opportunity for consistent income. It's inflation hedging, because infrastructure can provide a potential hedge against inflation due to its pricing power, contracted price, inflation adjustments, and regulated return framework that generate these pass-through operating costs. And again, because it's alternative investments, it's all about the diversification, low correlation to traditional assets, having things that can zig when other things zag. And don't forget the upside potential, because there's investment opportunities in thematics when it comes to infrastructure. Look what President Trump announced this week, and think of digitization. Think about what the last administration thought about decarbonization. Think about a concept of deconsolidation. All of that benefits from sustainable long-term industry trends. And something that was written in a magazine, I saw it, is that annual infrastructure need has been predicted to rise from 3 to 3.5% of global GDP. Well, where would that come from? Population explosion. That means there could be as much as 94 trillion of investment need through 2040. The next 15 years. That's a $3.7 trillion annual spend. Even if any of that's close, even if it's close, follow the money, right? And I believe that higher inflation, because we're in a higher inflation environment. President Trump is going to do everything he can to bring it down, but I don't see the price of my potato chips getting that much lower. And I don't see the 20 ounces ever coming back into my unsweetened iced tea bottle that's now 18.5 ounces. And because of that new inflation environment, what could be a slower growth macro regime, investors should think about shifting some of their asset allocation. It's not about wholesale changes. It's about small migration, small tweaks over time to start moving in a new direction to challenge the conventional wisdom. And if you want to learn more about how we're doing this, call us 833-964-PLAN, 833-964-PLAN. Connect with me and my team at VestGen Wealth Partners, the website, getretiredstayretired.com. That's getretiredstayretired.com. Well, I mentioned it before. A pro-growth, pro-business, less regulation administration is here, and the first order of business should be working together to get a renewed Tax Cut and Jobs Act. But you know what? No road is easy. It is difficult. And I think it's important that we appreciate the 6 hurdles that are there. I came up with 6 hurdles that do exist for the Trump tax bill. Number 1 is the timing. The timing, the markets, you, me, people want this thing to sail through in one early big bill. But to do one early big bill, it's going to mean including some border security and energy reform. And the issue is, can that happen, especially when we've got current government funding, because there was a Band-Aid approach, that ends on the 14th of March. Yeah, so there's some interesting timing that we're going to have to look at. That's hurdle number 1. Hurdle number 2, talking about getting a new tax bill through Congress, because the Tax Cut and Jobs Act is set to expire this year, is Republicans. There's a narrow edge in Congress. It's a slim majority in the House. It's less than a 60 majority in the Senate. And when you only got a couple seat majority in the House, you can't afford to lose any votes. And if you have one or more naysayers, those naysayers end up wielding a lot of power. They wield a lot of power. And on the Senate side, there's a budget reconciliation that would need to override the need for 60 votes in the Senate to defeat a filibuster. And here's where I'm going. I'm encouraged by the Tax Cut and Jobs Act getting renewed. I'm encouraged that there could be some other pro-growth policies, but understand the timing to get something done in one big bill prior to the government shutdown on March 14th, a narrow edge. And then you got to think about the cost, because bond vigilantes are out there. Look at what's happening to the UK. You don't want to end up being like the other side of the pond. And everyone's becoming aware. Our new Treasury Secretary that's been appointed by President Trump, wicked smart guy, but he's acknowledging that we got $36 trillion in national debt, and a 10-year extension of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act alone adds nearly $5 trillion to the debt. So you gotta get some spending under control. That's why this Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, is so important, and it's related to the tax bill. And don't forget number 4, the tariffs, right? Now, we haven't had gigantic action on tariffs, but what we are going to see is by April 1st, we'll know what the federal agencies think of potential tariff changes. And then you got to think about the other tax cuts that have been promised on the campaign trail that are competing for votes with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And then here's the big one. I'm talking about the 6 hurdles that need to be cured in a progressive pathway to get the Tax Cut and Jobs Act renewed. It's the SALT deduction. And it's probably the thorniest of all the sticking points. And remember that state and local tax cap, SALT, is the amount of state income taxes that can get deducted on a federal return. And it's currently capped at $10,000. It used to be unlimited. But there are House Republicans in high tax states like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, who want to increase the SALT cap higher than $10,000. They really want to repeal it in its entirety. And there's going to have to be a way, there's going to have to be a methodology to get those people to fall in line and score this together. So what's my take on it? I think we're on a path for pro-growth. I think we're on a path for less regulation. I think we're on a path to the renewal Tax Cut and Jobs Act, but there's some thorny issues and 6 hurdles that we see are going to need to get cured. So what are things you should be doing? Well, number 1, are you a pass-through entity? And are you taking advantage of the SALT cap workaround, the pass-through entity tax workaround? If you're not, you are leaving what could be thousands and thousands of dollars on the table. Let us show you how. If you're a normal person who doesn't have a pass-through entity, you don't have an LLC, you don't have a subchapter S, what are the things you can be doing to reduce your state and local taxes? Because anything you can do to fight that SALT cap helps, and we're here to give you resources. 833-964-PLAN, 833-964-PLAN. Connect with us, get retired, stay retired.
Like a dose of knowledge? Good, because Craig is back and about to fill your retirement prescription. Back to In the Know Radio on AM 560. The Answer.
I want to talk to you about the rule of one. The rule of one. That's going to be our theme for 2025 when it comes to retirement planning. But we got to take a look at some of these old rules, like, the 80% rule, the 40% rule, the this rule, the that rule. Do they actually work? Because for years and years and years, the 80% rule of retirement planning basically said, hey, if you can find a way to generate 80% of your pre-retirement income, you're going to be completely good. The issue is retirement has been completely redefined. It is no longer staying at home, bowling, going out to dinner once a week, sitting in the backyard, reading the newspaper, listening to the radio. Although I got news for everybody, AM radio is still well and alive because many of us are news junkies and informed citizens. The new definition of retirement, it's about being connected. It's about traveling to see the kids because they don't all live at home anymore. They're not in the neighborhood. They've gone out of state. It's about meals and entertainment. It's travel and leisure. It's adult active lifestyle. I mean, guys, you can even get graphite shafts instead of, steel on your golf clubs and put the ball down the fairway. And the challenge I have is, for some people, the 80% rule is going to be fine. But for others, the 80% rule is going to leave too much to be desired, especially with the crazy high cost of healthcare and property taxes, depending where you live. Because there's a reason a lot of people have left. It's high property taxes. But that 80% rule, I just don't know that it's enough. Study after study is indicating it. The next thing I think about is there was the so-called 4% rule. The 4% rule is where you withdraw 4% of your retirement savings annually, adjusted for inflation, to fund a 30-year retirement. But this rule, too, has come under scrutiny. And it should have come under scrutiny because not everyone has invested correctly in bonds and fixed income over time. And that is the reason the 30-year retirement of being satisfied through the 4% rule is tough. It might be tough. I think it takes a more tailored strategy, a much bigger discussion about needs and wants. And I think the rule of one for retirement is where it is. That's what I'm calling it. The rule of one for retirement. And you're going to say, well, what in the world is the rule of one for retirement? Well, the rule of one is this. Your retirement plan needs to be specific to you. The rule of one, you are the one. Your retirement plan needs to be specific to you. I can't overemphasize enough the importance of personal planning. Creating a side-by-side comparison of goals-based planning with cash flow-based planning that then ties into our strategies at VestGen Wealth Partners, strategies that are tested in the trenches, like our 3 pillars of retirement income, which again are capital matters, capital matters, capital matters. Once you've achieved wealth, once you've achieved critical mass, once you're on the cusp of getting retired or already retired, you can't get blown up. You can't lose a huge amount of money. And that means you need to work with advisors that understand the sensitivity around that. And you need to be finding ways to generate income. Notice that if you can generate sufficient income from dividends, interest, annuity payments, distributions, you can literally just cash flow your retirement. And when we talked earlier today about megatrends, when we talked earlier today about challenging the conventional wisdom of 60-40, when we talked earlier today about moving not just from public markets, but into private markets, notice those things I mentioned. Private credit, the world of direct lending in a first lien position, the concept of investing in industrial real estate, specifically warehousing, the concept of supplementing it with infrastructure, all of those were income plays because that fits into pillar number 2. And pillar number 3 is you still got to have a plan to grow your capital base over time so you can grow your income to outpace inflation. But let me give you some insight into how those 3 pillars are then backed by some simple concept. And it can be simply applied, which is just the old bucket of money. And that bucket of money means you got to have, at any given time, 3 to 5 years of capital sitting in your safe bucket. Why do you have to have 3 to 5 years of capital sitting in your safe bucket? Hell, you never know if aliens are going to invade Los Angeles. I don't know about you. Those drones over New Jersey were kind of crazy earlier this year. Bring those over Chicago. You know why they didn't come over Chicago. We'd be taking pot shots at them and shoot them all down on the west side. But in that first bucket, you got to make sure that if there's an event, whatever that world event could be, things come out of left field right now. Think about how markets got damaged when the Fukushima reactor went down. Think about the Arab Spring. Think about the great financial crisis. Think about COVID. Think about this. Think about that. That short-term bucket needs to be invested in today's market. Treasury bills, short-term bonds, commercial paper, areas where you can generate 4 to 5% returns consistently, 4 to 5% returns consistently. At least that's going to preserve the purchasing power of that money over the next 3 to 5 years, assuming the inflation continues to run in the 2.6 to 3.2%. But then bucket number 2 is what it's all about. Bucket number 2, think of it as your equity income bucket, your equity income bucket. It's those dividend payers. It's those cap and cushion strategies we've talked about. That second bucket is really the money that you're using, that you're generating income from to fill bucket number 1, which is your cash flow bucket. And you got to have a sizable chunk in bucket number 2. Think of them as those equity income strategies to get it done. But then what about bucket number 3? Bucket number 3, it's your retirement plan's fountain of youth. Yeah, it's your retirement plan's fountain of youth. It's the money that you're going to grow in a disciplined equity strategy, because partnering with great companies of America, especially those who know how to innovate, because innovation creates disruption. And investing through innovation that creates disruption has always been an investable thematic. And that gets us back into those mega trends we talked about earlier in the program. And I want to share with you how we do it, because I want to give everybody that wants it a family office experience. I want you not just to have an investment advisor under a fiduciary standard. I want you to work with a firm that does its financial planning under that CFP standard of care. I want you to have access to tax strategies, because our single largest expense is always the income taxes. And tax mitigation and tax planning comes first. And if you've got people that you love and they love you back, then you got to integrate the estate and wealth protection and the estate and wealth transfer strategies. And then don't forget, you got to bring that all together with the discussions about retiree healthcare. That's everything in Medicare and continuity of care, the world of long-term care planning. And that family office experience is we're providing those end-to-end services so people can engage with us in a meaningful capacity, multidisciplines, all under one roof. That's what we have always done. And that's what we do now under our new brand of VestGen Wealth Partners. Vested in your success, vested in the outcome for the client. Generational wealth transfer, generational planning, ensuring the messaging and the monies are there for surviving spouse and generations to come thereafter. 833-964-PLAN. That's 833-964-PLAN. Connect with me. GetRetiredStayRetired.com. That's GetRetiredStayRetired.com.
Get ready to be blown away with a hefty gust of financial know-how. You're listening to In the Know Radio with Craig Bolanos on AM 560. The Answer.
With the S&P 500 at an all-time or near new high, I think it's important we recommit to those ADRs, your asset allocation, your diversification, your rebalancing protocol, and your security selection. And I am so encouraged that this new administration of pro-growth, less regulation, energy renaissance, security is going to do what they need to do to try to renew that Tax Cut and Jobs Act. But in the same way, I talked about the 6 hurdles that it faces. And what I think people need to understand is now might be that inflection point. It just might be that inflection point where people need to look at their rebalancing. And as a part of that rebalancing, it's not just the mixture of stocks and bonds, but it's the mixture of publicly traded securities, stocks and bonds, versus private securities in the world of alternative investments. And one of our themes for 2025 is an incorporation of alternative investments in the right doses for people to get an additional element of diversification through lower correlated assets, aka having some things that can zig when other things may zag at a future state, combined with the generation of portfolio income to help supplement pillar number 2 of our 3 pillars of retirement income. And I want you to learn more about it. So reach out and contact us. Contact me directly. 833-964-PLAN. That's 833-964-PLAN. Visit me online. GetRetiredStayRetired.com. GetRetiredStayRetired.com. We rebranded our firm, VestGen Wealth Partners. We have a vested interest in our client's outcome, a vested interest in our client's success. That's that fiduciary standard. Generational wealth planning, generational wealth transfer, making sure your surviving spouse is taken care of before we focus on making sure the kids and the generations to come are okay. It's a family office for everybody. That's multi-disciplines, all under one roof, working in concert for you under that rule of 1, because you can't just use the 80% retirement rule. You can't just use the 4% withdrawal rule. You need something that is bespoke and customized to you. I'm Craig Bolanos, co-founder, wealth manager at VestGen Wealth Partners. Let's help get you and your loved ones retired and then stay retired. Connect with me online. GetRetiredStayRetired.com.